and welcome to CX Today. My name is Charlie, I'm the senior editor here, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Edgar Polak, an IT area manager at DPG Media. Edgar, thank you very much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Thank you, Charlie, for having me. And having quite a good day in spite of the too poor weather. It should be summer by now, but not sure how it is on your side. But here it's still rainy and cold.
Yeah, grey for about 3 weeks in the middle of July, which is taking me back to my childhood in England. Um, but yeah, it's great to have you as join us, as I said, and I'm really excited for this discussion today to talk about DPG Media's CCaaS migrations and to maybe share some of your kind of insights and lessons that you've taken from that. But first things first, to get started, I don't know. Obviously, I'm in Belgium now, so I kind of know a little bit around DPG Media already. For anybody who doesn't know, could you maybe tell us a little bit about the company and your role there?
Sure. DPG Media is actually the biggest media company in both Belgium and Netherlands. It's a Belgian-owned company. We do actually a lot of different medias. So we have online services, but we also have television, we have radio, we have newspapers, we have magazines in both Netherlands and Belgium. We're the biggest in most of those above. And yeah, it's a company that's actually continuously growing. I think that's a main characteristic as well. We continuously take over other companies, growing our business. So probably we'll be expanding outside of Belgium and Netherlands. We already have small footprint in Denmark, but sure that it will grow as it goes, because as a company we continuously take over other companies. It's a dog eat dog world, so we like to be on the eating side of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's some really great insight because you can tell just how many kind of companies, it kind of branches that you have, and I imagine from your perspective in your job that might make running a service environment that bit trickier.
Yeah.
Specifically when maybe you were on premise beforehand. And maybe the next question I would ask you then is kind of what was your contact center environment like pre-migration, and what challenges did you kind of see that you could overcome with a CCaaS migration?
Yeah, I think answer to that nicely ties into both aspects actually, because if we look to the landscape we were coming from, indeed it was an on-premise landscape. It was also a segregated landscape. So, like you are saying, we have many brands and many different products, but the contact center solutions that we had running off the premise were actually um, segregated per set of brands or per type of media. So we had a separate contact center solution for magazines. We had a separate one for newspapers in Netherlands, a separate one for newspapers in Belgium. So it's kind of diverse, and also since it grew by simply us taking over other companies, also there was quite a big difference between the different implementations. Also, if you looked in the channels that we were using, as well as the functionality that we had implemented over those channels.
Yeah, I can just imagine actually all the complexity that is involved with that in your role. So, so a lot of sympathy maybe there, but it's great to kind of hear about that. And before kind of this conversation, I had a look at kind of a presentation that you gave before, and you described your approach then, given these challenges to CCaaS, was you decided that a radical approach was the best kind of one to take. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about this approach and what made it so radical?
Yeah, yeah. I think in the presentation that you looked at, I think I used the visual of a ticking time bomb, because that's what we set ourselves up with. We knew that migrating away from such a segregated on-premise landscape would be a nightmare, and that we had to make sure that we couldn't go otherwise. If you start on an implementation, it's always easy at some point to turn back or only do half of it. And we wanted to make sure that we wouldn't go that way. Um, and we actually did that by simply selling our data centers. Um, and we actually had to hand in the keys now like 5 weeks ago. So we had to do it. There was no way back. We sold our data centers. We had to get away from them. That meant simply moving away from each and every of those segregated solutions to a single integrated cloud-based platform.
Yeah, and on that, you chose NICE as your vendor
Yeah.
for this. What made you think of NICE as kind of the best place vendor to help you in such a radical and rapid transformation process?
Yeah, and you're mentioning Rapid, and we needed that as well because in the end of the day, after doing our selection for NICE, we had about 9 months to do the full implementation. And we were sure that we could only succeed if we would have, let's say, a company and a solution to work with that, first of all, had all the functionalities on board that we needed. Like I said, we came from a quite diverse landscape with all kinds of functionalities, of course, with a business that wanted that all back and a bit more because that's how it goes. And of course, changing requirements along the way because that's how business works in the end of the day. So we needed a product that was really able to cater for each and every functionality that we had on board and that we would think of. That's one thing. A second thing is in such a big media landscape, you have integrations all over the place. So integrations with speech solutions, integrations with agent toolings, integrations with the data landscape, and quite a few more on top of that. So we also needed to have a solution that would actually integrate with speed. Eventually, you can integrate anything, any solution, but if you need to do it really quick, you need a product that's really sophisticated in doing that for you and helping you really out on the integration part. So that was a second thing that we took heavily in selections, especially because we were integrating with, well, let's say not too flexible packages like Salesforce and SAP. The third thing is that in doing such a project under time pressure, you will run into surprises. You thought about a lot, but in the end of the day, you still bump into things that you didn't think of up front. And if you bump into such a situation, you need a partner that is actually able and willing to move along with you without putting you in a lock-in and say, okay, we can help you, but please take on this big bill because that's the only way we're gonna help you. And for us, NICE upfront was ticking all those boxes together with our implementation partner Bright Contact. And also during the course of the project, it was proven right that the combination of NICE and Bright Contact still ticked all those boxes. So
Yeah.
we made a good choice, actually.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I think there's kind of those three pillars there that you talked about of reliability, integrations, and a feature-rich platform too. And I guess NICE is kind of does hit those very well, as you said. So you've gone through this rapid, radical transformation progress. You've selected your vendor who's worked alongside you to kind of implement that solution and integrate it with your various other solutions like Salesforce. Could you maybe give us a little bit of insights into kind of what you've seen as the results from that transformation process?
Yeah, I think the results also for our business have been even bigger than expected upfront or aimed for upfront, maybe. Because our main aim was actually to simply do this migrate away from this legacy without making too many changes to the way we were working in our customer centers. But along the way, seeing how the product worked, actually our business started asking, and we couldn't resist the temptation to also make some improvements in the way of working. So by now we are working multi-skilled, we are working blended over the different channels. And that's really a big step forward in terms of workforce management, in terms of skill management and people management. Um, we really now have, let's say, a single platform for our whole operation in the consumer interaction, and that's helping us big time.
Hmm. Yeah, it's also really interesting to hear how that transformation enabled you to reimagine processes like
Mm-hmm.
multi-skilled agents and various channel strategies too. So you can kind of, instead of spending your time, I don't know, preserving servers and things like that, you can actually
Yeah,
think more about the innovation possibilities. So I think that's particularly interesting now, and it'll be. I think it would also be kind of fascinating to think about kind of what lessons that you have from that entire process of first choosing a vendor and then ensuring a smooth migration. Yeah, so from across that journey, what kind of lessons would you give to a business that might be going through, might want to go through a similar process?
yeah, yeah. I think the first lesson I want to share is that if you do a selection, you have many criteria to go about, and especially if you have a um, procurement-led selection like we had. Sometimes you tend to go to choose something that's just right at that moment, that's just fitting your requirements, instead of looking beyond your direct requirements you could think of when you started off with the process. We deliberately chose to say, okay, we're gonna go not just for, let's say, the must-have requirements that we have, not just the minimal set, but we also go about all the things that we think we might want to use in the future. Uh, but we don't see that yet as part of the implementation. Um, and I think I would definitely advise to go that way because, like, well, we were just discussing, uh, it enabled us to actually go beyond just replacing a product in our implementation, and it really helped us to have the business step up instead of being stable for a period because you blocked everything out because you were implementing a product. So we could improve our operation alongside still doing an implementation of a new product and migrating away from the legacy. Um, the second thing I would say is to, and we did kind of go wrong there. We corrected that along the way, but um, imagine how you want your consumer interaction to happen, not just now, but also in the future, in the sense that the way interaction is going along, it's changing rapidly. And one of the things we didn't think about enough is to also think about the outbound part. Because if you think about the customer center, the traditional view, of course, is the consumer is contacting you. And maybe you want to call the consumer back. Um, but you may just be thinking about the inbound part. And this was also something that for us changed along the way, that we wanted to be much more proactive towards our consumer, and therefore really needed much better and bigger outbound possibilities than we thought of on first hand. Um, a third lesson learned, I think, is indeed go for flexibility. You are working for a complex organization. You are implementing in a difficult landscape, without doubt. If you're watching this broadcast, otherwise you wouldn't be interested, I guess, to see this interview. Make sure you have something on board that's really giving you the flexibility to go fast and to switch wherever possible. wherever needed. Both from, let's say, a partnering perspective as well as a tooling perspective. I think those are the three takeaways I want to give to people.
Yeah, and I think those are three really helpful lessons. What the first in looking beyond your current requirements and thinking about what you may need kind of in the future, and then also to think about the future of communication. I think a good example that you gave, that was kind of proactive outbound communications within that too, and then yeah, there was the third part also of kind of getting the flexibility. You hear a lot of stories about kind of certain companies that end up getting locked into a certain vendor and maybe held to certain requirements. And it's great to hear that kind of you, by working with NICE, you've managed to avoid those concerns. So I think those are three really great lessons to close on. And Edgar, I really appreciate you coming on to talk to us today. It's been great to kind of hear about your experiences and get those lessons at the end there. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me today.
It was a pleasure, Charlie, and thank you for the interview. Have a good day and good luck with the show, I would say.
Thank you, absolutely, and good luck, DPG Media. I'm sure you'll continue to be great there, and yeah, also thank you to everybody for watching. Bye for now.